Hi, I'm Daniel, and I want to welcome you to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast. My conversation went a little long with my guest this week, so I'm actually going to make this a two-part podcast. Today, my guest is Carl Chinn. If you don't know who Carl Chinn is, let me tell you a bit about him. Carl is a national security spokesman and the president of the Faith-Based Security Network. In May of 1996, a gunman entered Focus on the Family, taking Carl and 3 others hostage. In 1999, he began the Deadly Force Incident Study that has been an amazing data source for many years, as the awareness for the need for church security has continued to grow. In 2005, he was part of the group that developed the Life Safety Ministry at New Life Church in Colorado Springs, and he was there serving as part of the team who responded to a killer coming down the hallway in 2007. If you haven't heard Carl's story, I would encourage you to get his book, Evil Invades the Sanctuary, or contact him to come speak at your church. Carl has had a new calling and is the president of the Faith-Based Security Network. If you don't know what that is, we have Carl here to tell us about the work that he is doing. Carl, welcome to the Church Security Through Prevention podcast.
Thank you, Dan. Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Yeah, we've seen each other twice in 1 month, and usually when we do that, it's on the road.
We very seldom see each other here in Colorado.
Yeah, not unless we intentionally schedule coffee or lunch or something, and that's usually when we haven't seen each other on the road for a long time. So it's great to have you here. What I want to talk about a little bit today is your new venture. You know, you've been involved in the faith-based security aspects nationally for a long time, a speaker, helping churches to do it right. You've written the book, Evil Invades the Sanctuary, which is a great book, and we have that resource on our website as well as you, and we'll talk about that as well. So tell us a little bit about what the Faith-Based Security Network is.
You know, it was a vision of mine that I had for years to see church security operators come together in a way that they could network with each other and brainstorm together, share ideas, and move towards a set of principles and best practices and standard operating procedures that could be shared with other churches. And started it in 2016. That's when got the DBA of Faith-Based Security Network. But it wasn't until October of 2017 that the IRS blessed it as a 501c3. So we really didn't do anything except preliminary setup until February of 2018. After the IRS granted us the 501c3, it took a few months and selected an onboarding supplier for memberships, and we started taking memberships in February of 2018. So it'll soon be 2 years that we've been taking on memberships.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. I was working on our next newsletter just today, in fact, and it's the end of 2019 newsletter. And going back through what December of 2017 looked like compared to December of 2018, compared to December of 2019. And sometimes those of us who are entrepreneurial in our spirit, we get frustrated because we don't see enough happening. But wow, I got to tell you, Dan, when I went back and looked at it year by year, realized at the end of 2017, we had 0 members. The whole calendar year 2017, we'd taken in just under $600 worth of donations, and we were using that to launch our membership program. And then by the end of 2018, we had 180 members in 34 states, whereas the year before we had nothing. But we still didn't have a way for all of those members to communicate.
Right.
At the end of 2018. And sometimes I look at the forum that we've developed and I get frustrated with, we should be doing more. And then I realized today we didn't even have a forum a year ago. It didn't even exist. Now we have a forum with multiple different groups in it and over 340 members in 43 states and Washington, D.C., and it's really starting to work like I envisioned it.
And that's nice. I've looked at the state map, as it continues to get green,
Mm-hmm.
as you pick up different members in different states.
It's exciting to watch that. I love that little map. First
Yeah.
time I did that map, I was so happy because we were almost at half the states. The first time I did a map like that, we had 21 states represented. And I remember being so happy. We're almost halfway. And now to see 43 states and Washington, D.C., and it's coming along very well.
Yeah, and it's broken down into a variety of different aspects. So yes, you have the national aspect of it, and then as members come on board, then there's internal groups.
That's right.
Yeah, so
first of all, we have one group for every state. So you're right. on the big group room, and I call them rooms. To me, it's like a virtual building. Mercy. And in that virtual building, we have multiple different rooms, and those are the groups. We've got a group for each of the 50 states. Now, some of them are not yet populated because we haven't got any members in those states. And there's a couple of states where there's only one guy sitting in there.
Yeah, and him being in his own forum doesn't do much good for him.
Right, he doesn't have many people to talk to.
That's right.
But the fact of the matter is we do have a group for each state. And what's even more impressive than that, in my view, is we've got over 100 coalition areas where it's just like for Omaha, there's a coalition group in Omaha, and one in San Diego, one in Birmingham, Atlanta, Detroit, Phoenix, Pittsburgh, all these different cities where people are starting to join and come together. Of course, there's one here for Colorado Springs. We've got one of the oldest operating coalitions in the United States of churches working together and working with law enforcement. And we're seeing that model be replicated across the United States. So we've got those regional demographic type rooms, plus we have special interest. There's one group that's doing nothing but coming up with training protocols. And these are all law enforcement trainers, criminal justice speakers, or insurance professionals who are looking at what needs to go into a qualified training program. And as they're developing this, it won't be any one or two or three people's opinion. It's collective acumen of all the qualified people who are coming up with those training programs. And by the same token, we have another group that's developing standard operating procedures. And these are guys who have produced their standard operating procedures for their churches and continue to manage them. And these churches are anywhere from 50 people to 20,000. Some of them are megachurch managers. And they're pooling their resources to come up with a way that churches can produce their own manual. And it's not a manual, like I said, generated by a third party's opinion or a single person opinion. It's collective acumen. We have others that are best practices and have a public safety officers SIG, which is just our law enforcement officers who have their own private group where they can talk about ways that law enforcement agencies are working with churches across the country and coming up with some plumb lines and some best practices.
Yeah, I know it was the local group for our county.
Mm-hmm.
We all met, I don't know, several months ago at the end of summer. It was our first meeting together, and it was kind of funny. We're talking about different aspects of the webpage, the FBSN webpage, mm-hmm. And I said, and I talked about the seminar we have coming up, our seminar that we have coming up here in the Springs, and they're like, well, when is it, or what's the information? I said, well, I've put it all in the events calendar on the FBSN site. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And they're like, there's an events calendar on the site? And they all felt a little bit embarrassed because here's all these FBSN members, that, and they have their own trainings that they do, several of them do, different firearms trainings or simulator trainings or whatever the case is, and they're like, we didn't even know
Well,
that
it's
was
funny
out there,
that you
and so
mentioned that.
now they know.
It's
But I think
funny
I'm the
that
only
you
one
mentioned
that's
that is because here I am as president of the FBSN, and we've got all these different groups. And I didn't know until today when I was talking to the guy whose church you're having it at that this event was coming up, because I wasn't watching the events page for this local coalition here.
right.
And it's fun to be blindsided by things that are happening, Dan, that I didn't even know about. I was talking to one of our board members today, and we were talking about all the chatter in the forum today. There's lots of chatter going on in there in different groups. And I told him, I said, the amazing thing is I haven't said a word today. I, I've just stood back and watched all this chatter happen in different coalition areas, different states, because as an administrator, I'm in on all of those conversations. I can see them all, and it's amazing. It's amazing the amount of communication that's going on between these guys and gals. Washington State was doing a lot of chatter today, and Phoenix, different ones. Tucson was just really active today. So there's all these things that are happening that's just a blessing to me to just peer in at once in a while and see all the chatter that's happening. And then I'm talking to a local guy here today, and he said, yeah, we're having Dan over in February to do a CV Ministries thing. I said, really? Well, yeah, it's in your forum.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's so much going on that it's hard to, you have to, you don't allow somebody from Colorado to be a member of Florida.
Right.
That doesn't do them any good. Even if they want to know what's, be a part of that. Well, no, that doesn't work.
That's right.
So even from, my standpoint, I don't even get into it, but maybe twice a week because of time. And I just kind of look through and see what's new in it. And I imagine you've got access to all of them, and it can be very overwhelming.
I get a ping on my phone every time anybody in any one of these groups says something, so my phone pings continually. You noticed I shut it off before we started the meeting here.
And I had to reroute my emails from the form. And I know you can adjust the email, how you receive them in there, but that way I still receive them all, and then I can just go to that folder and look at them that way.
And Dan, the beautiful thing about it to me, and this is part of the vision.
We just want to take a quick break here to let you know how to contact us and where to find out more about our national seminar. I see communities that may know why church security is important, but they may not be doing anything about it or don't know how to do it well. Our national seminars are for ushers, greeters, children's workers, staff, volunteers, your security teams, and other ministries in your community. We say that this is a level 1 training that is designed to help equip you to serve well in your various ministries while maintaining a safe place for people to come. Getting churches on the same or similar page when it comes to security will only make the community safer as well. The easiest way to find out more information or to contact us is to go to cv-ministries.com. There you'll find a variety of training DVDs and books, with more being developed all the time. There's also a place at the bottom of the page where you can sign up for our monthly newsletter, and we would love your feedback on topics or guests that you would like to hear on future podcasts. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, let's get back to the podcast.
That I had is I wanted to see a meaningful membership, and it's not easy to vet every application. That's one of the most difficult things that we launched, that we have encountered. And when we launched the FBSN, we knew that we wanted people who are actually serving on a church program somewhere or developing ideas for their church. And so everybody that applies, we have to do a confirmation on them that they are who they say they are and they serve who they say they serve. And that has been a laborious project. We have some pending applications that are 6 months old where we just can't get them to provide us the information. And it may be because they don't have it. They didn't read everything right. We try to get information from people, but uh, not everybody that applies gets in. We've had to turn some away.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
they've
I didn't realize
said,
that.
but we're interested in this. We have a service where we do this for other people. Well, that's not what the FBSN is about. It's about people who are actually doing it for their church. It's
Right.
not about a business that's doing it for somebody else. We're not a Rolodex
Right.
of opportunity. We are a membership, a professional membership of law enforcement and church security operators, and I should say faith-based security operators, because we have ministries in there, like Compassion International, like the homeless shelters, different ministries. So I don't like to call it a church. It's a faith-based security operator.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And we're definitely have a lot of ministries around where we're at right now, that benefit from
That's right.
from it, and around the country.
Oh,
But
there's
definitely
a
around
lot
here.
of them.
Yeah.
Chicago, L.A., Fairfax, Washington, D.C. area. There's just lots of ministries in different parts of the country. Houston. There's lots of faith-based organizations that are not a church. As you know, I worked for many years for Focus on the Family and Dr.
Right.
Dobson, and I know one of the things that used to frustrate him was when people would call him a pastor
Oh,
of
okay.
that Focus on the Family church, and it's not a church.
That is for sure.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why we use the name faith-based organizations.
And I know I'm really careful. Either I won't comment or, and just observe unless I absolutely have something impactful to say, because I don't want it to be something that, that it's a CV Ministries thing, because that's
Yeah.
not what it's about.
Yeah.
You do have a resources list, and it's great that we're on your resources
Mhm.
list.
And you are.
But it's more important, I think, that the networking is happening
That's right.
in that.
And you bring up the resources list. That resources list is very important to me, because the resources list is also a vetted group of people. And from going through it with CV Ministries, it isn't as easy as calling up and saying, hey, put me on the list.
Right.
We want to know what you're doing and how applicable is that for the body of security providers for the faith-based security endeavor. And I call this a great endeavor. And your ministry, CV Ministries, the things that you guys supply are directly applicable to the membership. So I
Yeah.
appreciate having you on that membership list. And you yourself are an interesting person, because you are a supplier for the FBSN, but you're also very active in your church security program.
Yeah.
And that's where your membership is for your church security operations. And I've been there and seen you at work, and it's a fine working organization you've got over there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm a firm believer that we need to be serving.
Yes.
I can't. Even though I do this as my employment,
Mhm.
It's still important that I serve in my local church.
Yep.
For me, and they asked me to step up and lead at the main campus. Well, you know how often we're all on the road,
Right.
and I said, I don't know that I can do that, and they're like, well, no, you can do that. Like,
You got
okay.
voluntold.
I said, let me pray about it, and talk to my wife
Yeah.
about it. And fortunately, we've got a great group of guys that, and Jeff and I were talking about this too, is that, the individuals that you want, and I see it in the FBSN and in what's happening in the forum. It's not you don't see a pride or arrogance thing happening in there. It's people genuinely wanting to give feedback or
That's right.
give things. And that's, you don't want that in your teams. And so Jeff, being that volunteer security director,
Mhm.
it's very time consuming. He has to rely on other good people. Fortunately, I have some great guys on our team
Mhm.
at the main campus as well, that if I'm out of town and I'm not able to get the communication out or
Can
do
delegate.
things, absolutely, we have a phenomenal group of guys. And that's what's really important, is we want to help churches to be able to get to that point, to where they're developing their teams
Mhm.
or their structure, whether it's through the different. What you guys are working on is huge, because
Mhm.
that's what people want, is what are the operating procedures that we need to have? How do we do training, and how do we do it well?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's,
So much of the chatter in the last few days on the national page in there has been about training, if you've noticed. The one group that has everybody, there's been a lot of conversation in there recently about how do you manage your trainees and your operators. And I loved what one of our contributors said out of Oklahoma. She's a lady that is with the police department down there, but she also manages her church security team. She's an investigator. And she said something that I thought was so good. She said, you can be trained and not work for the team, but you can't work for the team and not be trained.
right.
Training is so critical to what we do. We serve our churches, and we do so. Everybody that's a member of the FBSN, all of the very serious security operators I know, put a real emphasis on training. We're not just good guys with guns.
Right.
We are trained protectors.
Yeah. And that's that piece that a lot of people are missing. And it's not all about the gun.
No. There are many states and many jurisdictions and many theologies and particular churches where they can't carry a firearm, and we tell them that's fine. It's not about the gun.
Right.
We are trained protectors. And
I was on a church forum a couple weeks ago that one of our security guys at our church told me about. Said, hey, you might want to get plugged into this. And this guy innocently asked, what do we do about, our church's beliefs are we can't have a firearm. So he was asking for some actual help. How do we do this well? How do we do this without the firearm piece? And well, instead of being helpful, a lot of people are just being critical. And that's a big difference. We're not with the FBSN, and nobody's acting in that way. Any question that's being asked is taken very seriously, realizing we are not all the same.
That's right.
We are not all in the same states. We don't have the same beliefs.
Yep.
We all worship differently. We are, as you know, when we go into different churches to do a seminar, or as you go and speak around about the FBSN around the country, every church is different.
Dan, do you know we even have Democrats in the FBSN?
I believe it.
We don't want to let that word out.
Yeah.
No, the FBSN, we really welcome people from all kinds of backgrounds. And when you get back east on the Atlantic seaboard, and especially up in the Northeast, that there's some really dramatically different political opinions, etc., from, let's say, churches in the Arizona or Texas area, or even Colorado. We have many from California, Oregon, Washington. You get into multiple different opinions, but we are a melting pot of those opinions where we come together, and our single purpose is to keep the people we love safe.
Right. And it's a heart posture.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's not I'm better than you, or I have more skills than that, because I definitely don't have the skills. We've talked about this before. God equips the called. He doesn't call the equipped.
That's right.
Because I asked you before, is this where you thought you would be?
Not at all. And, I recently had my 40-year class reunion of my high school. And then when my mom passed away just about a month ago at the funeral, I saw friends from that area that I hadn't seen since high school. And they were pretty shocked at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They couldn't visualize me having a civilized conversation with a law enforcement officer. Many of them had seen me in high school have conversations with police officers, but they weren't civilized. And for them to find out that I've become a Christian, I'd literally, in 1978, the year after I graduated high school, I literally gave my life to the Lord. And to me, that was an extremely meaningful term. It wasn't cliche. And so for 40 years, uh, we, I said 78, it was 79 when I gave my life to the Lord. I have tried my hardest to do what He wants me to do. And I felt many years ago that He called me into this, and had some situations that I just couldn't deny that He had chosen to have me be at a front row seat for those.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier where we're at now to look backwards and see the stones that we had to step on
Yeah,
to get to where we're at, and
that's right.
not like either one of us will ever say that we've arrived.
No.
You know, I trust a lot of other people that are far smarter than me in multiple areas.
Oh my goodness,
And,
yes.
and I'm constantly wanting to learn myself and how to do things well, how to do things better, and so on. I get the question quite a bit, and you probably do too, is what are your qualifications?
Oh yeah.
You
Yes.
know, because people are looking, they look at that like, are you law enforcement? Are you a former military? Well, what did you do in the military?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm retired Air Force, but that has nothing to do
Right.
with how God's called me and equipped me for this,
Right.
because this is not how I thought I would ever be in my life.
Right. Right. There are so many people out there ready to take competitive shots at anybody else who is serving in this capacity. And I've been the brunt of that. I've had websites go up and call me the questionable church security voice or whatever. That's just one of them that I remember that went up. And I never argue with those people and say, no, I am qualified, because I'm not.
Right.
I'm not. You've heard me tell my audiences before that the Bible character that I feel like I'm most like is Balaam's donkey. All I'm trying to do is warn churches that there's a need for intentional readiness and to move towards that, because we're in this epic battle between right and wrong, and we were told that 2,000 years ago and even before, but 2,000 years ago we were told the devil is a roaring lion, seeking those he may devour. And it's very true, Dan. There is evil out there, and it doesn't shy away from a church just because of a name over the door and a cross on the roof. And we've seen bad things happen in church. And we've got to be serious about taking care of the people that we love in these churches and faith-based organizations.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that term, intentional readiness. I heard you say that in a seminar a couple of years ago, and I made a note of it, and I still have it floating around on one of my desks here. Yeah. You know, because I think that's we call it CV Ministries, we call it prevention, but really it's the same. We look at it the same way. It's being intentional about our readiness.
That's right.
Is what it is.
That's right.
And doing it well, and realizing what we're really going to have to deal with in the churches. You know, there's stuff that people would be amazed at what happens just from week to week in many of our churches.
Yeah.
And has nothing to do with an armed individual coming into the church.
That's right.
You know, but we still have to be there for the hurting and the broken. You know, it's something I tell people all the time, that's what the church is for. From a security standpoint, we have to embrace that as well. From that standpoint,
we have scams, we have vandalism, we have abuse, we have arson,
medical emergencies.
All of these things are things that get our attention as church security professionals.
Yeah, and being out there is a big deterrent.
Absolutely.
Having that presence, and we see it all the time. The churches that get it going they see it less. And if we can get churches within a community to work together on a same or similar page, they may not be on the same page, but they're all intentional about that readiness, then that community is going to be stronger and safer as well.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's important.
Yep.
So tell a little. Every year, and we just did number 2 this year, you have an annual conference as part of the FBSN that has been, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work for you, and your volunteers, but it's a great opportunity for churches, one, to network, and also to hear some great speakers. So talk a little bit about that. This concludes part 1 of today's podcast. I invite you to come back next week and pick up where we left off as we continue our conversation with Carl Chinn. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to this podcast. If you really enjoyed it and you found it of benefit to you, we really appreciate your feedback. There's several different ways that you can provide us feedback. One of them is to subscribe to the podcast, is to share it with others, and another is to contact us directly, particularly if you have any questions or concerns or you want more information on how to host a seminar in your community. You can contact me directly at danielblevins@cv@heart.com, or you can go to our website. That's cv-ministries.com. Both of those will get you in the right direction. Until next time, make sure that you're out there protecting the flock with a heart of service.